All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're not just going to talk about basic sleep hygiene, so you can forget the standard advice you've heard a million times. Instead, we're going to completely deconstruct the hidden neurobiology and, believe it or not, the thermodynamics of human sleep. We're going to treat the human body as what it truly is, a highly complex, interconnected biological and thermodynamic machine. By the end of our time together, you're going to possess the exact mechanisms to fundamentally transform how you view and actually control your nightly restoration so you can unlock long-term cognitive resilience and optimize your health span.
Here's a quick look at our roadmap. We're starting with the architecture of sleep, then moving into the surprising thermodynamics of melatonin. After that, we'll expose the modern habits that are actively sabotaging your autonomic nervous system, and finally, we'll learn exactly how to manually regulate that system.
Let's dive right into Section 1, the architecture of sleep, where we decode the two-process model. To engineer better rest, we first have to understand the fundamental, almost mathematical biological forces that dictate when our brains actually power down. Formulated back in the 1980s by Swiss sleep researcher Alexander Borbély, the two-process model is literally the cornerstone of modern sleep science. What it proves is that your sleepiness isn't just some random wave of fatigue that washes over you. No, it's a highly precise, dynamic push and pull between accumulating chemicals in your brain and your internal biological clocks.
It helps to think of process S like a giant hourglass. Literally, from the moment you open your eyes in the morning, a chemical called adenosine begins building up in your brain, creating this continuous rising pressure to sleep. But then you have process C, which acts as your internal clock. And here's the fascinating part. It doesn't just promote sleep at night. It actively fights that adenosine pressure all day long by generating a strong circadian alerting signal. This signal actually peaks in the early evening to keep you conscious, until it finally drops off, unlocking what sleep scientists call the sleep gate.
Once you pass through that sleep gate, your rest is definitely not just one uniform block of unconsciousness. Your brain orchestrates these highly active, alternating phases. In precise 90 to 110-minute cycles, you transition through N2 sleep, which is crucial for filtering out environmental noise, down into N3 deep sleep. N3 is where the magic happens: massive tissue repair, metabolic clearance, and basically washing your brain of toxins. And finally, you move into REM sleep, which is absolutely critical for emotional processing and memory consolidation.
Moving on to Section 2, Thermodynamics and Melatonin, the body's hidden cooling system.
Okay, so to successfully transition from wakefulness into those deep, restorative sleep cycles, your body has to undergo a radical thermodynamic shift. And this brings us to a really fascinating biological mystery, right? We've all been there. If your adenosine sleep pressure is incredibly high after a really long day, why do you still sometimes find yourself lying awake, completely exhausted but staring at the ceiling?
The answer lies not just in your brain, but in a strict physical barrier, your body's thermodynamic state. For you to physically cross over into sleep, your core body temperature absolutely must drop. But, basic physics dictates that to lose core heat, that heat has to go somewhere, right? So, your peripheral skin temperature, specifically in your hands and feet, must rapidly increase in order to radiate that heat outward into your environment. Now, this thermoregulatory cascade completely changes how we need to view melatonin. We always hear about it as the sleep hormone, but really, it's a master thermoregulatory cue. Roughly 2 hours before bed, your rising melatonin binds to MT2 receptors in your blood vessels, which triggers distal vasodilation. Basically, it dumps warm blood into your hands and feet. This creates what's called a distal to proximal gradient, an active peripheral heat loss that literally cools your core to initiate sleep. But human biology has a massive hidden vulnerability here, and it's represented by the number 2.1. This is the mean optical density of the human eyelid. Simply put, it means our eyelids are incredibly thin. Ambient room light, street lamp outside, or the glow of a television can penetrate straight through your closed eyes while you are actively trying to sleep. And because of that incredibly thin barrier, light hitting your closed eyes sends a signal straight to your brain that triggers the rapid degradation of something called the ANAT enzyme. Now, ANAT is the exact enzyme responsible for synthesizing melatonin. So think about this. A glowing device in your bedroom doesn't just annoy you. It chemically aborts your body's thermodynamic cooling system. It actively blocks deep sleep at the molecular level, which over time severely accelerates cellular aging.
Section 3. The Autonomic Saboteurs. How Modern Habits Hijack Human Biology.
Unfortunately, light isn't our only enemy here. We regularly consume compounds and adopt habits that absolutely shatter our autonomic nervous system's ability to recover. These exogenous disruptors dismantle our neurobiology in a few different ways. Caffeine, for example, directly blocks those adenosine receptors we discussed earlier. Eating late meals desynchronizes your central brain clock from your peripheral digestive clocks. But without a doubt, the most insidious saboteur is alcohol, because it acts as a massive physiological stressor disguised as a relaxing sedative.
When we look at the data derived from millions of wearable sensors, the results are undeniable. Acute alcohol intake spikes your nocturnal resting heart rate by anywhere from 10 to 20 beats per minute overnight. So rather than resting, your cardiovascular system is basically working overtime. This reflects a massive shift toward a sympathetic fight-or-flight state of dominance while you are supposedly asleep.
And the consequence of that is staggering. Just 2 drinks can crash your heart rate variability, or HRV, by up to 33%. If you don't know, HRV is the ultimate marker of your nervous system's recovery capacity. By crashing it, alcohol severely cripples the parasympathetic rest and digest response that your body desperately needs to repair itself.
This creates what sleep scientists call a double hit effect. First, you get the immediate chemical destruction of your sleep architecture. It suppresses your REM sleep and heavily fragments your rest. But second, it causes a lingering autonomic hangover. Wearable data proves this suppression of your HRV can leave your nervous system dysregulated for up to 5 full days after heavy intake. It completely compromises your cognitive function, your longevity, and your emotional resilience long after the alcohol has actually left your bloodstream.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 4. Regulating the nervous system, the biological manual overrides. So, if the modern world of screens, stress, and substances is constantly pushing us into a chronic sympathetic overdrive, how do we forcibly pump the parasympathetic brakes? Well, we have to realize that our nervous system doesn't just switch off. As this insight captures so perfectly, it is a dimmer switch. We have to intentionally and gradually wind down our biology. And the single most direct, research-backed remote control we have to operate that switch is human breath. See, slow, intentional breathing isn't just some fluffy wellness trend. It is a biological, mechanical override. It directly stimulates the parasympathetic branch of your nervous system via the vagus nerve. By consciously and mechanically slowing your respiration, you immediately lower cortisol, you synchronize your heart rate variability, and you physically signal to your deeply evolved survival brain that it is, in fact, safe to power down.
Using a structured technique, something like the 4-7-8 method, leverages an extended exhale to dramatically drop your blood pressure. That long 8-count exhale forces a literal downshift in your autonomic nervous system. It lowers your arousal levels and prepares you perfectly to cross through that sleep gate we talked about earlier.
And if you want the absolute ultimate biological hack, you pair that breath work with a thermodynamic override. Taking a warm bath or a hot shower 1 to 2 hours before bed artificially induces that exact peripheral vasodilation we unpacked in Section 2. It forces the blood out to your skin, radiating that core heat out of your body, and perfectly mimics the natural temperature drop of sleep onset. It's an incredible cheat code for your biology.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from the push and pull of the 2-process model to the thermodynamics of melatonin, past the modern saboteurs of our nervous system, and finally to the manual overrides of breath and temperature. The science unequivocally proves that sleep is not just some passive surrender. It's a highly active biological state over which you now have profound control. So, the only question left is, what single variable are you going to change tonight to engineer a better biological machine tomorrow?